Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville, in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and so very, very honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. We have two great guests today. In a little bit, we'll meet Gramps Jeffrey celebrating I Don't Want to Turn 3. But first, we'll be speaking to Anita Tosh. She is the author of the Book of Jeremy. Before we invite our guests into the studio, we have this very special message for anybody who hosts their own Little Free Library. We recently gifted the Little Free Library on Beacon Street in Hyde Park, Massachusetts, with a half dozen middle grade novels and YA titles. This Little Free Library is just about a mile or two away from our studio in Reedville. This beautiful purple Little Free Library was built by Sean and Patrick James along with their grandfather. You can see a picture of me and Sean alongside his beautiful Little Free Library on our social media pages, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. If you host a Little Free Library in your community, first, we want to say thank you for the great service you're doing for all of your neighbors. We also want to encourage you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the contact button and let us know about your Little Free Library. We'll enter you into our next Little Free Library giveaway. It's free, and you can do it at readingwithyourkids.com. Joining us right now from Northern California, our guest today is the author of a great YA title. It's called The Book of Jeremy. Please welcome to the show, Anita Tosh. Hey, Anita, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks, Jed.
I'm excited to have you here. Tell us about The Book of Jeremy.
Well, The Book of Jeremy started when my grandson said, how about a book with my name in it? And so it took several years from him asking that before it got done, but we finally got it released just a couple months ago. It starts with a boy who's 12 years old, and it goes through till he's 17, and he begins getting visions and dreams when he's 12 years old that show him they're prophetic, and he starts seeing things happening around him in the world that connect with these dreams that he's having. And finally, he keeps track of them in his journal, and then he finally does talk to his dad about this, and the dad says, it looks like God must have something special for you. Let's pray about it and see what it is. And also the book goes on, it shows a lot of growth in Jeremy. He starts out as a bratty little 12-year-old little brother, and he grows into a leader by the time he's, at the end of the book. He helps to save his family. The book goes through World War III. The world's invaded by aliens from another world, and he's the one right there directing the family on where to go and how to be safe. And so it has quite a bit of adventure in there too.
I have to tell you, I think you buried the lead, as many people will say. You're talking about this growth, this kid, he grows. And by the way, it happens when the world's being invaded by aliens. I think I'm in a gun with that.
Yeah, well, these, he starts out kind of seeing some flying saucers. Uh-huh. And wondering about them. Another part of the book that is, I have some chapters that are kind of laced through the book that are actually, I call it the dark side. And it shows the devil, or Satan, whoever you want to call him, and his group of fallen angels and how they're busy. And they actually are the ones who are masquerading as aliens and flying the flying saucers.
Ah.
And so it's a power beyond this world, you could say. But it's something that he becomes aware of bit by bit. And also there's a love interest there. There's a girl that he has a crush on when he's 12, and finally gets up the nerve to talk to him when he's about 15. Talk to her, excuse me. And
That sounds about right.
yeah. And then he at one point he prays and asks God, is there anybody else who is having dreams and visions like me? There's got to be more people than just me. And so God lets him know that it's this girl that he has a crush on is also having dreams. And so that gives him the courage he needs to go and talk with her and see if she's ever had dreams or visions. And that begins their relationship, mostly on the phone. Mm-hmm. Her parents are very strict, and so are his. And so they don't actually get together until the very end of the book. But so it's a lot of different things happening here.
Certainly is a lot of different things happening. Did you name the Book of Jeremy, intentionally to give it a connection with the Bible?
Yes, because Jeremy is very much like Jeremiah in the Bible. Jeremiah in the Bible also was called when he was very young. He also had a message that nobody wanted to hear. And he's there when Jeremiah is there when his people are taken captive. And so this is also happening in the background, that when he leads his family to safety, not all of them make it. There are people that are picked up and they never see him again.
Fascinating. We talk a lot in the podcast about the different benefits that reading with our kids has. And there's so many benefits. Of course, when you're reading to your kid, you're modeling that, and you're going to help your kid learn how to read. You're going to introduce your kids to vocabulary. You're going to help them gain
Absolutely.
empathy. But I think the one thing that a lot of us overlook is that reading with our kids, especially reading books with a moral that is in line with our values, is a great way to talk to our kids about our values. Certainly, traditional Christian values, you don't see a lot of that in a lot of typical media these days. So if you are a parent that wants to instill, traditional Christian values to your kids, reading books with those values, and it sounds like that's what the Book of Jeremy has, would be a great way to have that and have some really honest conversations with your kids about your faith.
Absolutely. Yeah. In our family, from the time our kids were very young and not even in school yet, we had our family time together every night, that we didn't have church, and we would read from the Bible, and then we would read another story that was just, a nice story that we could enjoy, that would be beneficial in that way. And so this was our life growing up. And this is also something that happens in the book. In the book, Jeremy's the youngest boy in a family that's very large. He has 4 sisters and a brother. So for our day and age, that's a big family. But they also have the same kind of family time together. And sometimes it's at home. Sometimes there is just, at the dinner table, in the car, or they're going camping. So there's all of these scenes where the family is together and talking and oftentimes praying together.
Yeah. I had a conversation once with a parent whose daughter was a few years younger than my daughter. And our kids attended a Catholic school. And after one of the church services, this parent came up to me and she said, love that your children are involved, and I love that they're up in the altar, and they're such great role models. And I'm so afraid my daughter's going off to college, and that's so scary for me because kids in college, they start to question their faith, and that terrifies me. And my answer to her was, it's okay for kids to question their faith. Because when you question something, your faith should be able to stand up to those questions. If it can't, then maybe there's something wrong with the faith.
That was a good answer. Yeah. And really, I believe there's a time in every child's life, no matter what kind of a faith that they're growing up in, they have to reach a point of accountability for their own self where they decide, am I going to accept what my family has taught me, or am I going to go another way? And that's, that's just the way it is. No matter how much we want our children to believe the way we believe, there's no guarantee. We can pray for them and we can take them to church or whatever kind of faith, temple or whatever. But still, that person is going to have to make up their own mind when they get to that age when it's, they're old enough to make that choice.
Yeah. And I don't know if you agree with me. I hope you do. But, if my kids were ever to turn to me and say, well, I'm looking at the world and through my experience, I've come to believe this, and it's different than what you're believing. And if that happens, I'm still going to love my kid just as much as I did.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, definitely. Yeah. There's no question about there ever being any change in how much we love our children. Yeah. If we're believing that the faith that we're in is the only way to heaven, we'd be really sad if they're not believing it, because we want them to be in heaven with us forever. And would certainly pray about it, but that's as far as we can go, is, just show them our love and pray.
Now, I know that the book of Jeremy is not your first book. You have 2 other books?
Right.
Yeah.
The first book is the Zella Chronicles, which Zella is my youngest granddaughter, which is why Jeremy came and said, hey, she's got a book, what about me? Uh-huh. And so Zella, I'm just using my daughter's name. It's not about her. The story is about actually a girl who dies when she's rather young, and her experience in heaven, that she grows up, she wants to grow up, and God tells her, well, the only way to grow up is to have some earth experience. So if you want to have a mission to earth and help some people there, then you'll be able to grow and mature. So each chapter is a new adventure that God says, yeah, there's someone down here that needs your help. And so she does a lot of different things to kind of help get people on the right track.
Wow, cool. And what's the other book?
The other one is called God's Armory. And this is another end-time book, but it's about a whole church and what they go through the last 3.5 years before the return of Jesus. And so they're there for the tribulation, and God is keeping them safe in a secret place right up to the end.
Oh, fascinating. And I have to ask, what did Jeremy, the real-life Jeremy, your grandson, think when he first held the book of Jeremy in his hands?
Man, I don't know. You have to ask him.
Well, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about the book of Jeremy and find out more about Anita Tosh.
I have a website, booksbyanita.com, and you can find information about all 3 books there. There's also some Bible bits and bites that I started putting online, and those are there as well. And my blog. You can also go to BookBub, and that'll take you to, if you put in the name of the book, it'll take you to me and show you all the different venues to purchase it if you're interested.
Wonderful. Well, we've had a fascinating time speaking to the author of The Book of Jeremy, a young adult title by our guest, Anita Tosh. Hey, Anita, thank you so very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Jedley. Loved it.
We hope you enjoyed our chat with Anita Tosh. In just a moment, Gramps Jeffrey will be here. But before he joins us, we want to invite you to join us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, @readingwithyourkids on Instagram. check out our Pinterest page, which is called Reading with Your Kids. And, of course, you can connect with us on Twitter at Jedley Magic. And we always love it when you contact us through our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on that contact button. Let us know what you love about the show. Let us know how we can make it even better. Joining us right now from Scottsdale in Arizona. Our guest today is celebrating his debut children's book. It's called I Don't Want to Turn 3. Please welcome to the show, Gramps Jeffrey. Hey, Gramps, how are you?
Great, Jed. I appreciate you asking me on.
I'm excited to have you on. You know, I probably didn't want to turn 3, but that was almost 100 years ago. I don't quite remember that well. Tell us all about this book.
Well, I think it's important to understand why I wrote this book.
Mm-hmm.
Living this past year because of the pandemic caused by the COVID-19 in isolation, except for when you get a chance to be with your family, gave me a special time to watch and interact with all the grandkids. So I got to tell you, that was quite a trip. All 6 of my grandkids have completely different personalities. The one thing they do have in common is their sense of curiosity and how excited they get when they accomplish something new. Watching them grow up year to year and how they interact with each other is the basis for this book. What goes through a toddler's mind that the parents so desperately need to understand? When does a toddler understand the difference between me and us? This book explores how a family finds all this out together. As a baby boomer myself, trying to understand the world, how it's evolved since I was 3 years old, is also part of the story. My parents didn't have cell phones. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have cable TV. They didn't have the remotes. I remember, from my dad says, you go change the channel. You're my clicker. So I was the remote when I was a kid. My parents' definition of discipline is just so quite different than the parents of today. Has today's world made for a better place for children to grow up? I'll let you answer that question. As you weigh how you were treated compared to how we treat our kids today. So I wrote this book to read to these grandkids. Their reaction to me has been really invaluable. As you watch them understand, Jordan, who is the star of the book, discover the difference between right versus wrong. You can see the older kids have gone through this same dilemma. And as younger kids don't quite yet understand the concept of sharing. So this whole experience for me really has been priceless.
Well, you're really lucky. One of the things that I heard about the pandemic is, so many grandparents weren't able to spend any time with their kids, and they were so alone. So I'm really happy that you were able to spend time with your kids.
Well, I've got 2 of them live here. I have 3 daughters. Each one has 2 kids. I've got a son too, but he doesn't have any kids. And one of them lives here in Scottsdale, so we were with him all the time. The one that was Austin came to live with us for about 6 weeks or so, and so we had all 4 of them together. So it was really a chance to see how they just interact. So I was lucky for that.
When you started to say chance, I thought you were going to say another word that began with CH, and I thought you were going to say it was a real challenge. And
Well, the real challenge is when do kids actually take responsibility for their actions? Is it 3 years old? Is it 13? Is it 23? It may be 63. That's when, I know plenty of people that still don't take, for their actions responsibility. So that's the real challenge. At what age do you really learn to do that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're absolutely right. I know people my age who still don't take responsibility for themselves. So I know that you've written, and now Gramps Jeffrey is your pen name for your children's book. I know that you've written a number of other books for adults. How was writing a children's book different, and did you enjoy this process?
Well, I enjoyed the process because the kids could relate to it. So in other words, when my grandkids started reading the book, they got into it because it's based on the true story. And all the pictures in the books are based on pictures I have taken. We send them to an animator, and she made them look a little bit more exciting, but they're based on real pictures. So as the kids go through the book, they said, "That's me. That's my cousin." So it's just they love reading the book and continue because they're part of the book. So that in itself was a real pleasure.
Yeah, I bet it was. Was it difficult for you to, get out of the mind of grown-up writing, books on business for grown-ups and really kind of going into that place, getting yourself into the mind of a 3 and 5-year-old?
Well, what happens is you kind of step back a second and say, why do you read books to children? What is it that makes it so much fun? And so you got to think about what are the benefits of reading books to children, and that really makes you kind of think about how you're going to write a book. Well, one of the benefits is the bonding. That it's a great time for you to spend time with a child as you're reading them a book. So during the day you're running around, they may drive you crazy, but when you sit down with a book, it gives you a chance to really bond with your grandchildren. So, that's one of the reasons, for the benefits of reading a book. Another reason for reading to your kids, it helps support all kinds of listening skills. Now, you and I know that as we grow older, listening skills is our number one asset. The better we listen, the more we learn, the more we can communicate and so forth. So starting young with these kids 2, 3, 4 years old, reading the books helps support the listening skills. So they get into it, and especially if it's written about them, they really listen. Another reason that you write a book and then read a book is, the cognitive and language development. When you think about it, the number of words that you can put into these books, how you can expand the variety of words, you can relate it to the kids, and so it really is good for the kids to be able to understand, what all these different words are, and probably the most important one when you think about reading kids is their attention span. These little kids, they really have a small attention span. But if you sit down with them, you read a book with them, you take the time with them, it just helps with them really spending time and quality time with you as a grandparent. And so grandparents reading books to their kids goes beyond just I'm the grandparent. It really helps you connect with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've been talking since the beginning of the podcast about those benefits, and especially, celebrating the bonding and that bonding that you get with your kids or with your grandkids, your nieces and nephews. We really want to remind everybody listening that you don't have to be a parent to sit down and read with kids. It's a really valuable experience. You brought up a benefit that I don't know if we've addressed so much. We've talked about, kids being able to listen to a book at a higher level than they're able to read. But I don't think we've made the connection with the whole idea of reading with our kids helps them become better listeners, which is a skill that can really help a person succeed for the rest of their lives. You think about the bosses that you've had who wouldn't listen to suggestions, or you think about the employees who are in there and, the minute the boss has a suggestion for them, they're not listening anymore. All they're hearing is criticism and they're taking it personally. And it's so important for us to be able to open up our ears, open up our minds, and just listen to a person, to engage in conversations and exchange ideas.
Oh, and that's a good point, because there's all kinds of questions as you're reading to your children that you kind of want to ask. Before you read the book, and again, it goes back to the listening skills, making sure that they're listening to what's going on, is you want to ask them, what do you think is going to happen in this book? So they see a cover of a book and they say, well, here's a book. What do you think is going to happen? Okay. Again, as a grandparent, it helps you with the listening and the interaction, and let them say, I think this is going to happen. And, once you begin reading the book, who are the characters in this book? Who are they? What is the setting? Where is it? Again, it just helps with the communication and so forth. And then, does anything in this book sound familiar to you? Now in my book with my grandkids, it all sounded familiar to them. But if you're reading another book outside of your family and it's not about them, what sounds familiar to you? What do you, and then probably the most important part is, what was your favorite part of this book? Let them think about it, and then why is it your favorite part? So it's good once you do, and again, bringing back the whole listening thing is going through and asking these questions, not just reading the book, what's on the pages of the book, but actually interacting with the kids, because I think that's what they're going to remember when they get older.
Well, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Gramps Jeffrey and I Don't Want to Turn 3.
Go to my site, it's Gramps Jeffrey, GrampsJeffrey.com. And the reason that it's called, I named myself Gramps Jeffrey, is Jeffrey is my middle name. And it's spelled the different way, R-E-Y. And forever, my wife always spelled it wrong. She always spelled it the other way. So I figured if I put it on a website and I put it on a book, my wife's going to understand how to spell my middle name. And it worked. So you go to GrampsJeffrey.com. You go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble. All the major bookstores do carry it online. And so it's a quick way to get the book.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of I Don't Want to Turn 3, Gramps Jeffrey. Hey, Gramps, thanks so much for being with us today.
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Fabio Napoleone. He'll be here to celebrate Dragon Boy, his debut children's picture book. It's a really fun interview. You don't want to miss it. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Gramps Jeffrey. Be sure to check out I Don't Want to Turn 3. I also want to thank Anita Tosh. Be sure to check out the Book of Jeremy. I want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan, Michael Murphy, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all come together to thank you. Thank you so very much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.